Hi guys, it's Mrs. Heggie here. Today we're going to take a look at some introductions that I've pulled as samples for you. We've spent some time talking about what makes a good introduction, so now we're going to start talking about what makes those introductions really good and taking apart the pieces and beginning to evaluate how a writer puts an introduction together to make it fantastic. Sometimes we have to weigh what the introduction looks like, which is why I have a picture of the person kind of balancing. You've got an X and then you've got a check. And when you evaluate something, you have to decide whether it's good or not and think about why. So as we work through these introductions today, you want to keep in mind that what makes an introduction good and the pieces that fit together. And then eventually down the road, we'll look at some introductions that could use some help. And we'll talk about why they aren't quite as effective. So to review, we talked not too long ago about introductions and that an effective introduction needs to have a hook to a bridge, a claim, or a thesis. And we gave each one some visuals to remember them by. So your hook, you gotta hook them so you can cook them. Right, guys? You have to be able to capture the reader's attention. The whole purpose of the hook is to grab the reader's attention, to pull them in, to encourage them to continue reading your essay. All right. Now, remember, an introduction is different than the first paragraph or the first chapter of a book or a short story. That's a little bit different, and I think we need to clarify and review the difference between an essay and a piece of literature, because they're set up a little bit differently. But an essay has the introduction, and that's what we're talking about today. So you gotta get the reader's attention and pull them in with your hook. And then as a writer, you build a bridge. And we talked about the bridge being written last after you have the hook and your thesis statement. But the purpose of the bridge is to connect those two together. It's a group of sentences that smoothly shift the focus of the writing from the hook to the main topic. All right, so it helps to make that transition. It provides background knowledge, was the other term that we used as we talked about this portion of the introduction. And then finally, you have your claim or thesis. And we used the image of a roadmap to symbolize the claim or thesis because it outlines exactly what your audience should hear about. It's their roadmap and it's your roadmap as it helps to maintain the focus. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in here. We're going to take a look at this introduction, and it actually comes from a student essay entitled Summer, 15 Days or 2.5 Months. And you can see I've color-coded the introductory paragraph. So you've got your hook here in yellow. You've got your bridge in blue. And you've got your claim or thesis statement here in green. The type of hook that this writer is choosing to use is a scenario. And what the scenario does is it sets the stage for the topic. It says the final bell rings. It's the last day of school and summer has finally come. So you always want to have your audience in mind when you create a hook. And this is definitely a scenario that either students or a teacher can easily relate to, because both know what it feels like to be on the last day of school as summer is in front of you and you've got a long time to look forward to and a break from school. You can relate to that. The purpose of your introduction is to set the stage for what's to come, and also to get the audience on the same page with you as a writer as you're creating a particular feeling. So this writer is setting this scenario for the last day of school and trying to get the reader to remember and imagine what that feels like, right? So then we're going to hop down to the bottom of this introductory paragraph, and we're going to look at the claim and thesis. And it says, there are numerous downsides to year-round schooling. It has no positive effects on education. It adds to costs, and it disrupts the long-awaited summer vacation. Now, you will notice that there are parts here that are already underlined. And these are your main ideas that you would expect to come in the body paragraphs. There are 3 items in this series. So I would, oh no, yep, sorry, I started to count incorrectly. Yep, 3 items, 1, 2, 3. So no positive effects on education, adds costs, disrupts long-awaited summer vacation. So I would be looking, if I were the reader, for 3 body paragraphs. And each body paragraph would take a different topic there. That's a pretty traditional way to put together a thesis statement. And when you're first starting out, that's a really good way to do it, because then you're making sure that you are clearly articulating, clearly communicating with your reader the main ideas of each body paragraph. Now, the other thing that this person does really well is they make it very clear what the topic is and what they're claiming about the topic. So there are numerous downsides to year-round schooling. So we know that this writer does not believe that we should have year-round schooling. This writer believes that we should have a summer vacation, which I'm sure you will all probably agree with. So, aren't you just so fortunate today? So you know, the hook sets the stage, sets the scenario for students to really be able to relate to this feeling of the last day of school. Then we look at that claim and it sets the stage. We know that the author does not believe in year-round schooling, that there are benefits, that there are reasons why we should have the summer vacation. So the job for the writer now is to provide some information, to build a bridge, to provide enough detail to go from the hook into the claim or thesis. And it says, students don't have to think about school for at least another 2.5 months. That is the way it always should be, or that is the way it should always be. Schools should continue using the traditional calendar and not a year-round schedule. The writer is focusing on the negatives of year-round schooling, so the information included in the bridge needs to connect the hook to the claim or thesis. The information the writer chooses to use provides the reader with some of the author's opinion, right? So students don't have to think about school the way it should always be. That's the author's opinion. Again, schools should continue using the traditional calendar. That's the author's opinion. But it's just enough information to lead into the thesis. See, this is where you have to be very careful that you don't give away too much information, or you don't give away and provide information that is unfocused or unrelated to the topic. For example, this author could have gone into something about, summer being a really great time to have to go on family vacations or to travel. But that's something that could be a detail here in this 3rd body paragraph, so you wouldn't want to give that information away in the introduction. So overall, this is a very solid introduction. They've got a good hook, a scenario that the reader can relate to. You've got a strong claim or thesis where we know what the position and the side is that the writer's taking, as well as the body paragraphs, the main ideas for those. And then we've got a bridge here that connects the two together. All right, so that's a good thing. So this next introduction, you'll see this person is using the staccato hook. Text, post, message. So 3 words, short. It only takes a few seconds to check or call on a phone. You'll notice that all 3 of those words deal with something to do with a phone. Is a sentence that follows, that makes sense. And they are actually all the same part of speech. In this case, they would be considered verbs. And so if you're going to use a staccato, which is a harder technique to use, you want to make sure that you are maintaining consistency, or what we call what would be parallel words, so that parallel structure, so that you wouldn't have all different types of words. You would want to keep that consistent. So, if you are the reader, you're wondering, what this author is going to say about using the cell phone. All three words have something to do with using a phone, and it sets the audience up to think about the ease of using a phone. So if we jump down here to the claim or thesis in green, although cell phones are used everywhere, on the road they are a dangerous distraction to drivers and should be prohibited. So this first part here, it acknowledges the other side of the argument, but then it still takes a stand and stakes a claim that when you're driving, cell phones are a dangerous distraction to drivers and should be prohibited, so they shouldn't be allowed. So you've got this idea that using the cell phone doesn't take very long, and then you've got this idea, then you've got the claim that's saying they're a dangerous distraction and shouldn't be used when you're on the road. So now it is the writer's job, to build the bridge to connect the two together. So the bridge says, you see it every day, especially in freeway traffic. A car is weaving back and forth, speeding up, then slowing down, or suddenly stopping. So that continues to take that staccato, that hook, and build upon that idea of checking a cell phone and what happens when you're driving in that and you check a cell phone. No, it's not a drunk driver. It's a cell phone driver chatting, posting, or texting. Okay, so it provides that context for the reader. And then it leads right into the claim. So we've got a good hook, we've got a solid claim where we know what side the reader's on, and then they build a bridge to put those two together, providing enough background information that you understand where this writer or where this essay is going to go in terms of talking about cell phones and the distractions that they pose. So this is the last introduction we're going to take a look at today. And this one uses a little bit of a different lead for us, or hook. Can you decide what type of hook this is using? If you chose the startling fact, you would be correct. In urban areas, American teens have been involved in more gangs in the last 5 years than ever before. That phrase, than ever before, provides the audience with the notion that this is an increasing problem, and it prompts them to begin thinking about their relationship to the issue as well. Then let's go ahead and take a look at the claim here. And I want you to think about what you notice about how this claim is structured. Excellent supervised after-school programs, more jobs available for teens, and healthy family relationships will go a long way towards ending the crisis of gang violence in our society. So do you think that's an effective claim or not? And what is the stand that the writer is taking on this topic? So if you noticed that this claim uses the traditional way for setting up a claim or thesis, but kind of in a flip-flop way from the first essay we looked at, you would be right. So it lists the main ideas of the 3 body paragraphs first, and then it also takes a stand later on here. It says, these 3 things will go a long way towards ending the crisis of gang violence. So you know that the writer wants to end this crisis of gang violence. So now the writer needs to build a bridge here, right? They need to take, you, the reader, from the startling fact and transition down to the claim or thesis. So you need to provide some information for you about why this problem needs to be solved. So this is a major issue, as stated here with this startling fact. There are more gangs in the last 5 years than ever before. So they have to provide some context about this for this problem and why it is a problem. So it says these gangs of teens have been committing a lot of violent crimes. The victims of these crimes are both gang members and people outside of gangs. So committing a lot of violent crimes, that is not good. If I'm the reader and I know that that's happening in my community, that's kind of scary. Or if I know it's happening in a nearby community, that's also going to alarm me. The victims of these crimes are both gang members and people outside of the gang. So I'm not in a gang. But if people outside the gangs are being affected, then that means it could impact me too. So it's building a case for why this problem is such an issue. It doesn't just impact the people in the gangs, it reaches out to the people outside of them too. Many people do not want to travel to these areas in our cities because of the danger from this problem. All right, so now it's adding to the case for why it's a problem. If I like going into the city to shop or to go out to eat or to do anything, then I might be afraid of the danger of the violence. For this terrible situation to stop, it is going to take a combined effort on the part of many people. So in addition to setting up why this is a problem, the writer is also starting to set the stage for the fact that many people need to be involved in the solution, that it's not just going to be an easy one, but it's going to take everyone being involved to make it happen. So they're able to go from that startling fact and start to build a case for why this is a problem, and then they hit you in the claim or thesis with the ways that this problem can be solved. And so that's how they've set up an introduction that goes from having a good startling fact hook to then a good bridge into a strong thesis or claim that sets the tone for the entire essay. So over the next week or so, we're going to take a look at some more essay introductions, and we're also going to take a look at some that aren't so good, that might need some help and to be made a little bit better. But in the meantime, I want you to be paying attention to introductions. If you're reading any nonfiction, any essays or articles, pay attention to the way the introductions are crafted. As you're reading your novels that you got for independent reading, if you're reading something fictional, pay attention to the way the author hooks the reader. Now remember, that's not an introduction in the same way that we would have in an essay, but authors of fiction, of novels, also use hooks or leads to grab their reader's attention. So be looking for really good hooks in the ways that authors pull their readers in. I want you to begin to collect them. Either take pictures of them and bring them in, or bring the book in, because we're going to talk about some of these later in the week. So I'm inviting you to collect some hooks or leads to share with the rest of the class. I hope that this video was helpful for you today as we begin the process of evaluating introductions, which is really the first step in being able to write a really good introduction. Remember I said that the bridge is one of the trickiest parts to write? Well, I'm hoping that as we take a look at good introductions as well as some that need help, you'll begin to see how the hook and the thesis are connected together with the bridge and the possible information that you would want to include in that area. I look forward to seeing how you answered the questions here with this Edpuzzle today, and I hope that this helped you out. We'll talk about these intros together as a class, and I'll be able to answer more of your questions when we're together on Thursday.